A boy of 11 stands at the edge of a half-dug foundation in his grandfather's back pasture in eastern Tennessee, July of 1958. The dirt is red. The shovel is taller than he is. His grandfather is 71 and has not asked for help from a neighbor in 40 years. The boy is holding the shovel because his grandfather handed it to him and walked back to the truck to fetch a post-hole digger. Nobody is watching. Nobody is supervising. The boy is alone with a job he has not been taught how to do, and his grandfather expects him to start. That boy will be a different man by sundown. Not because the foundation gets finished, it does not, but because a man 70 years older than him trusted him to begin. In 1958, that was how competence was built. Not in a classroom, not on a phone screen, in a hole in the ground with the wrong tool before lunch. These are 31 things every American man could build with his own hands in 1958 that require a contractor today. Most men in the United States cannot do a single one of them now. And number 1, the thing all the other 30 were secretly preparing him for, we will not name until we get there. But it is the only skill on this list that cannot be replaced by money. Subscribe before we start. Number 1 is the thing that matters more than all the other 30 combined. Number 31. A boy in rural Indiana in 1958 could build a chicken coop from scratch using only a handsaw, a hammer, and nails his father bought by the pound at the local hardware store in town. Pine boards cut to length by eye and marked with a carpenter's pencil. Rafters notched where they met the plate. A door hung on leather hinges his mother had sewn from an old belt the previous winter. The roof was rolled tar paper, the kind that came in 3-foot rolls for $2.80 at the feed store. No plans, no YouTube tutorial, no kit shipped from North Carolina. The boy had watched his father build one when he was 7, and now at 12 he was building one himself for his own laying hens, because his father had given him 3 hens that spring and said the rest was his problem. A chicken coop today is a flat-pack unit from a big box store, delivered to the driveway, requiring an Allen wrench and 45 minutes. The father is not on the job site. The boy is not on the job site. The coop arrives pre-built, the way most competence now arrives, assembled by someone else on a truck with a barcode. The boy who built his own never forgot which corner had the crooked nail. That memory is part of how a man learns to trust his own hands. The coop was not the point. The crooked nail was. And the next thing on this list was even harder to fake. Number 30. A 17-year-old in western Pennsylvania in 1958 could frame the walls of a small outbuilding, a woodshed 10 by 12, using 2x4s he had helped his father select from the lumber yard in town. Studs on 16-inch centers, measured by counting across the bottom plate and marking with a pencil held against the thumb knuckle. The corners were let in. A double header ran across the door opening. The plates were nailed through the studs with 2 16-penny nails per joint, a count the boy had heard his father say out loud so many times it was in his body. No level, no square. A plumb bob made from a length of fishing line and a nut his uncle had drilled a hole through on the drill press in the basement the previous winter. The outbuilding stood for 41 years. The boy who built it is now 78. He can still tell you which wall he had to take down twice because the studs were twisted. He learned what twisted lumber looked like by handling it, the way his father had learned, the way his father before him had learned. By the feel of a board that fought back when you drove a nail into it. A teenager today does not select his own lumber. He does not know what a 16-penny nail is. He does not know why centers matter. The wall he lives inside was framed by a crew he will never meet, on a slab poured by a machine he has never seen. He pays for the wall. He does not own the knowledge of how it stands. And what was inside that wall, the next item on this list, is even harder to find now. Number 29. A man of 43 in 1958 in Central Ohio could run a new electrical circuit from his service panel to a workshop at the back of his garage. He bought 12-gauge wire in a 100-foot roll at the hardware for $9. He mounted a porcelain pull chain fixture on a wooden block he had planed by hand from a piece of oak. He drilled the entry hole through the siding using an auger bit in a hand brace, turning it the way his own father had taught him at 9 years old, leaning into the work, the bit pulling itself through the pine as he went. He wired the fixture himself. He knew, from watching his uncle nearly die in 1948, that the black wire was hot and the white was neutral, and the bare copper went to the box. He turned the breaker back on with his hand still on the wall, in case the breaker failed, the way his uncle had told him to do. A man today calls an electrician. The electrician is $240 minimum before he gets in the truck. The man who once ran his own wire now pays someone to run wire for him, and he does not know which wire is which, and he has not thought about which hand is on the wall. The breaker is not the skill. Knowing which hand goes where when the power comes back on, that is the skill. And the next skill on this list used to belong to almost every boy in America before his bar mitzvah. Number 28. A boy of 13 in suburban New Jersey in 1958 could replace the guts of a single-handle bathroom faucet, the washer, the seat, the stem packing, using a wrench from his father's toolbox and a dime wrapped in a piece of cloth to unscrew the stem cap without scratching the chrome. The faucet was a Sterling or a Crane, the two brands sold at the local plumbing supply. The boy had watched his father do it the year before on the kitchen sink. Now it was the upstairs bathroom. He turned the water back on with his hand under the spout in case the stem was still bad. It was not. The drip had stopped. He had fixed it. A drip today means a plumber, a service call fee, and a 3-day wait. The boy who fixed the drip is now 74 and still wraps a dime in a cloth before he touches a chrome stem. He does not know he is doing it. His hands remember. A memory in the hands is a memory the phone cannot erase. That is the difference between a man who fixes things and a man who calls. And the next skill on this list saved 1,000 farms in 1958, and almost no household in 2024 can do it. Number 27. A man of 56 in upstate New York in 1958 could repoint the mortar joints on a fieldstone foundation wall, a wall that had been there since 1893, using a pointing trowel, a hawk, and a bucket of mortar he had mixed himself in the wheelbarrow. 1 part Portland cement, 3 parts sand, 1 part lime. He knew the ratio because his father had taught him, the way his father had been taught, by a man who had been taught by his father, going back to a country no one in the family had lived in for 60 years. He raked the old mortar out of the joints with a chisel. He wetted the stones first. He pressed the new mortar in by hand, then struck it smooth. He did it section by section, north side first, because the north side dried slowest. He knew that. A wall today gets a polyurethane sealant sprayed on it by a man in a truck who is paid by the linear foot. the man who owns the wall does not know the ratio. He does not know which side dries slowest. He does not know that the wall has been there since 1893 and is older than his great-grandfather. The wall was not the inheritance. The knowledge was, and it left with the man who knew it. And what was inside that wall, the next item, used to be standard equipment in every American garage. Number 26. A boy of 14 in southern Michigan in 1958 could rebuild the carburetor on a Ford Flathead V8, the one in the 49 pickup that had not run since the previous October. He had watched his uncle do one on a 36 Chevy 2 summers before. He bought a rebuild kit at the auto parts store for $2.40. He took the carburetor off the manifold. He disassembled it on a piece of newspaper on the garage floor. He cleaned every part in a coffee can of gasoline. He replaced the float needle and the gasket. He reassembled it by memory. The truck started on the second pull. The boy was covered in grease from the elbows down and grinning in a way his older sister would never understand. A carburetor today is a sealed unit. The mechanic replaces it for $600. The boy who rebuilt one has not touched a carburetor in 40 years. He drives a vehicle whose engine is controlled by software he cannot read, on a road whose rules are written in a language he did not learn. The grin was not the point. The second pull was not the point. The boy was building a self, one that knew it had done a thing nobody else in the household could do. And the next skill on this list used to be passed from father to son on a Saturday morning in every American town. Number 25. A man of 38 in eastern Kansas in 1958 could sharpen a circular saw blade himself, using a file clamped in a homemade jig he had built the previous winter from a piece of channel iron. He knew how many teeth a 20-inch blade had. He knew that every other tooth was sharpened from one side, then the rest from the other, to keep the blade tracking true. He sat on the back porch with the blade between his knees and worked the file with both hands, leaning into each stroke, listening for the sound of a clean edge, a sound he could hear after 20 years of sharpening, with his eyes closed. The saw cut a clean 1/4 inch off a sheet of plywood that afternoon. He had done that since he was 16. A saw blade today goes to a sharpening service 40 miles away. The man who used to sharpen his own no longer has a clamp he built himself from channel iron. He does not have a porch where the work could be done. He has a phone, and a man in a truck, and a credit card. The boy on the foundation at the top of this video, the one with the shovel, he is 11. By the time he is 16, he will be the man on this porch. We are coming back to him, but not the way you think. And the next skill on this list used to belong to almost every bridegroom in America before he got married. Number 24. A young man of 22 in western North Carolina in 1958 could build a chest of drawers for his new wife, the one he was going to marry in 3 months, using pine boards he had picked out at the lumber mill in town, the kind that cost him $11 for enough wood to do the whole piece. Dovetail joints cut by hand with a backsaw and a chisel. A drawer that slid on wooden runners rubbed with candle wax. A finish of 2 coats of boiled linseed oil, thinned with turpentine, rubbed in with the palm of the hand. He made it in the workshop behind his father's barn, on evenings after his shift at the gas station. He signed it on the underside of the bottom drawer in pencil. The chest lasted 61 years. The marriage lasted 49. A chest of drawers today is $600 at a store that ships from a warehouse. The young man who once built one has a wedding registry now. The drawer still slides on the runners he rubbed with candle wax, in the guest room of a daughter who never asked how it was made. A man who builds the chest and a man who registers for one are not the same man. They do not feel the same thing when they close a drawer in the dark. And the next thing on this list is what every American boy once knew how to build before he knew how to drive. Number 23. A boy of 12 in eastern Missouri in 1958 could build a treehouse, a real one, 8 feet off the ground, with a floor of planks and a railing his father had told him had to be at least 30 inches high or the county would be on him. He used lag bolts to attach the supports to the tree, drilled with a brace and bit, the kind that took both hands and a shoulder. The roof was a piece of sheet metal scrounged from a barn teardown 2 miles down the road. The latter he built himself, from 2x4s and rungs he had cut 1 by 1 and nailed. No instructions, no Pinterest board. A boy, a tree, and a father who came out once a week and pointed at a board and said, "That one is too crooked, do it again." A treehouse today is a kit from a catalog. The boy assembles it with his father on a Saturday. The father reads the instructions. The boy holds the wrench. The tree the kit is built around is the same tree, but the boy who built the kit is not the boy who built the treehouse. One of them will remember it. One of them will not. And the next skill on this list used to be a rite of passage for every farm boy in the Midwest. Number 22. A boy of 15 in northwestern Ohio in 1958 could build a fence, a real one. Woven wire with a top strand of barbed, the kind that ran along the back 40 of the family farm. Using fence posts he had helped his father cut from the woodlot that winter, sharpened at one end with an axe, driven into the ground with a post maul that weighed 12 pounds and required both arms and a good stance. He stretched the wire with a come-along his grandfather had built in the barn out of spare parts and a length of chain. He knew how to set the corner post first. He knew that if the corner post moved, the whole fence leaned. He knew this because his father had told him once, and only once, and the boy had listened in the way that boys in 1958 listened, which was all the way. A fence today is a crew of 3 with a tractor-mounted post driver. The crew is paid by the foot. The fence looks the same. The boy who would have built it is in the house, looking at a screen, watching someone else build a fence on the screen. He does not know that a leaning fence is a problem of the corner post. He will never know that. He is 23 years old now, the boy who built the fence, and he has been married for 2 years, and his wife is pregnant, and the house they are renting has a basement that floods every spring, and he has decided, without telling anyone, that he is going to build a small house on a piece of land his uncle is selling him cheap, 2 miles outside of town. He has never built a house.
He has built everything else on this list so far, and a few things that are not on this list, and he does not think he needs permission to build a house. He does not think he needs a contractor. He thinks he needs a few books from the library, 3 months of evenings, and a brother-in-law who owes him a favor. He is wrong about the time it will take. He is right about whether he can do it. Number 21. A man of 28 in central Illinois in 1958 could pour a concrete sidewalk, a real one, 4 inches thick, with expansion joints cut every 6 feet, using a groover and a straight edge, using bags of Portland cement he had bought at the lumber yard, sand from a pit 5 miles down the road, and gravel from the creek behind the property. He mixed it in a wheelbarrow, 2 shovelfuls of cement to 6 of sand to 6 of gravel, a ratio he had learned from his uncle who had built barn floors in the 30s.
He screeded it level with a 2x4. He floated it with a wooden float he had made himself from a piece of pine and a dowel handle. He broomed it for traction, pulling the broom in long arcs the way his uncle had shown him. The sidewalk is still there. It has been there for 66 years. A sidewalk today is a crew with a mixer and a chute and a screed machine that the man who owns the sidewalk has never operated. The man owns the sidewalk. He did not pour it. He cannot patch it. The crack that opened last winter will get wider next winter. He will hire a man to fill it. The man will mix it in a wheelbarrow. The man who fills it for money learned the ratio from someone. The man who owns the sidewalk forgot he used to know it. And the next thing on this list is what every man in America used to do the Saturday he got his driver's license. Number 20.
A boy of 16 in eastern Nebraska in 1958 could change the oil in the family car himself. A 54 Chevrolet Bel Air with the small block V8, using a drain pan, a box end wrench, and 3.5 quarts of 30-weight oil he bought at the filling station for 79 cents a quart. He knew where the drain plug was because he had crawled under the car with his father 2 years before and watched him do it. He knew which way the plug turned. He knew that the oil filter on this model was the canister type and could be unscrewed by hand once the engine was warm. He knew that a quart of oil cost almost as much as his lunch at the diner. He learned the cost the way boys in 1958 learned cost, by being told once and remembering. You may already be seeing the pattern here. Every one of these has one thing in common. We will name it at number 6.
An oil change today is a $20 service at a chain that hands back a key fob. The boy who changed his own oil is 58 years old and has not crawled under a car in 23 years. He does not know where the drain plug is on his current vehicle. The drain plug is now hidden behind a plastic shield that requires a socket set to remove, a socket set he does not own. The shield was not there to make him safer. It was there to make him dependent. And the next skill on this list used to be in every high school shop class in 1958. Number 19. A boy of 17 in western Massachusetts in 1958 could weld. Real welding, stick welding on mild steel, the kind of welding that builds a gate or repairs a broken plow. Using a Lincoln AC stick welder his father had bought used from the blacksmith supply in town for $85. He had learned in the high school shop class, which every boy took, 2 periods a day, 5 days a week, for the full school year.
He wore a leather jacket because he did not own a welding helmet yet. He learned to strike an arc by dragging the rod across the joint and lifting it just enough to keep the puddle moving. The first bead he ever laid down looked like a row of bird droppings. The 30th looked like a coin stacked on its edge. He could tell the difference by sound. Welding today is a trade credential. The boy who once welded in a leather jacket is now 78 and still has the jacket. His grandson owns a plastic welding helmet from a big box store and has welded 4 times in his life. 3 of them were in a community college course. 1 was on a broken lawnmower. The community college is not the same as the leather jacket. The leather jacket was the cost of admission. The course is the admission itself. And the next thing on this list was once taught to every boy in America by his uncle on a Saturday in a garage. Number 18. A boy of 14 in Northern California in 1958 could build a workbench, a real one, 6 feet long, with a maple top laminated from 4 2-inch planks he had glued up himself using hide glue he had mixed in a double boiler on his mother's stove. The legs were 4x4s he had cut from a tree his uncle had felled on the property the previous autumn and milled on a portable sawmill. The vise on the front was a Wilton his father had given him for his birthday, the kind that cost $28 new and was the most expensive thing in the boy's bedroom. He squared the top with a framing square. He checked it with a level. He used it the rest of his life. It is now in his son's garage, 300 miles south, where his son does not work on it. The son stores Christmas decorations on it. The workbench is not the inheritance. The bench top, with the marks of every project, the circular saw gouge from 1961, the varnish stain from the oak bookshelf in 68, the burn mark from the soldering iron in 73, that is the inheritance. The son's Christmas decorations are on top of it. And the next skill on this list was once how a man told his neighbors he was solvent. Number 17. A man of 41 in eastern Texas in 1958 could build a brick mailbox post at the end of his driveway. 3 courses of red clay brick laid in a running bond pattern on a concrete footing he had poured the previous Saturday. He had bought the bricks from a brickyard 5 miles down the road for $12, delivered on a flatbed truck the man from the yard drove himself. He had learned to lay brick from a man in his church who built the fellowship hall in 1954 and who let any man in the congregation come help on Saturdays. He learned to keep the joints consistent by running a piece of lumber across the face of the work as he went. He learned that brick likes butter, the mortar joint, not the brick, and that a dry joint is a failed joint. The post is still standing. The man who built it is gone. A mailbox post today is a pressure-treated 4x4 set in a bag of Quikrete. The man who owns it has not laid a brick in his life. He does not know what buttering the joint means. He will never learn. His son will inherit the pressure-treated post and replace it in 7 years with another pressure-treated post, and never once think about red clay brick laid by his grandfather in 1958, still standing at the end of a driveway he has never visited. And the next thing on this list was a test every country boy passed before he was 12. Number 16. A boy of 11 in western Kentucky in 1958 could split firewood, a real cord of it, 16 inches long, stacked along the back fence, using a maul and a wedge, the kind his grandfather had swung since before the boy was born. He knew how to read a round. He knew that a round with a crack in the end face would split clean on the first swing. He knew that a knot had to be worked around, first one side, then the other, then the wedge driven into the heart of it. He swung the maul with both hands and stepped into the swing with his back foot, the way his grandfather had taught him, the way the grandfather's father had taught him, going back to a man in 1878 who split wood for a railroad crew in winter. The boy was soaked with sweat by noon. The woodpile was 4 feet high.
The boy could not lift the maul above his waist the next morning. A cord of firewood today is delivered on a truck and stacked by a man in a crew of 2 who charges $180. The boy who once split his own is now 73 and has a bad shoulder, and a propane furnace, and a son in another state who does not know what a mall is. The boy could not lift his arms the next morning. That is how he knew he had done a thing. There is a boy on a foundation in eastern Tennessee at the top of this video. He is 11 years old, and his grandfather has just handed him a shovel and walked away. That was July of 1958. It is now October of that same year. The boy is 12. The half-dug foundation is still half-dug because the ground was harder than anyone had planned, and the summer heat made the work go slow. But the boy is still digging. His grandfather has not come back.
His father has not come back. The boy is alone with the job, and he has decided to finish it before the first frost. He will finish it. That fact, not the foundation, the finishing, is the thing we have been building toward. Pause here. Tell me in the comments, which of these did your father or grandfather teach you? The comments on this video are full of men naming the exact moment. Read them. And the next thing on this list is one almost no man under 40 can do today. Number 15. A man of 36 in northern Wisconsin in 1958 could build a set of kitchen cabinets from scratch. Face frame construction, raised panel doors, dovetailed drawer boxes. Using lumber he had milled himself from birch logs he had cut on his own property the previous autumn and stickered in the barn to dry. He had made the doors from a single board each, glued up from narrower pieces and shaped on a router plane he had bought used from an estate sale for $4. He hung the doors on offset hinges he had forged himself in the basement forge his father had built in 1932. The kitchen he built them for is still in the house. His daughter lives in the house now. She paints the cabinets every 10 years and does not know they are birch. A set of kitchen cabinets today is a stock unit from a home center, hung in an afternoon by a crew that does not know the wood, does not know the house, and will not be in the house again. The daughter paints them, and they paint over the wood she does not know is there. A man who builds the cabinet and a man who orders it are not the same man. They will not be the same father. And the next skill on this list was the mark of a man who could take care of his own. Number 14.
A man of 47 in eastern Colorado in 1958 could build a chimney. A real one, brick, with a concrete cap and a spark arrestor on top, for the new wood stove he had installed in his living room the previous fall. He had learned to lay brick from a man who had built half the chimneys in the county in the 30s, and he had spent 2 Saturdays that spring helping the old man on a job in town, just to be sure he had the technique. He laid the chimney 1 course at a time, checking the plumb with a 4-foot level and the bond with a story pole he had marked off in 1/8 of an inch. He built it to code, not because the code required it, but because the code was how you kept your family from burning to death in January. The chimney drew clean. the house warmed. A chimney today is a stainless steel pipe through the roof, installed by a man with a permit in his pocket. The homeowner does not know the difference. He does not know what a story pole is. He does not know that the chimney he is heating his house with is held to the framing by a single bracket he could kick loose with a work boot. The man who built the brick chimney could rebuild it if it fell. The man who owns the pipe cannot. And the next thing on this list was once the test of a man's first summer away from home. Number 13. A boy of 18 in central Michigan in 1958 could build a cabin, a 16 by 20 one-room with a sleeping loft and a porch, using logs he had peeled himself with a draw knife the previous fall. He had chosen the trees with his uncle, white pine, straight-grained, no knots in the first 16 feet. He had hauled them to the site with a team of horses the uncle still worked for hay in summer. He had notched the corners with a broadaxe he had sharpened himself on a sandstone wheel his grandfather had used since 1902.
He had chinked the gaps between the logs with a mortar of clay, lime, and chopped straw. He had built a stone hearth in one corner, the stones from a field 200 yards up the hill. He had slept in the cabin alone the first night, in November, with the door pulled shut and a fire going and the wind off the lake and not a sound of another human being within a mile. He did not build the cabin because he needed shelter. He needed to know he could build shelter. A cabin today is a manufactured structure on a concrete pad, delivered on a flatbed. The boy who once built his own is now 82, and the cabin is still there. He goes there in October. He does not stay overnight anymore. The hearth is the same. The chinking is the same. The draw knife is on the porch. His grandson does not know what a draw knife is. And the next thing on this list used to be the first thing every boy learned before he was allowed near the family car. Number 12. A boy of 13 in eastern Oklahoma in 1958 could rebuild a small engine, a Briggs & Stratton from a push mower, the kind every household had, using a kit he had ordered by mail from the Sears catalog for $3.40. He had taken the engine apart on the kitchen table, where his mother had laid down a bed sheet first so the parts would not scratch the wood. He had cleaned every part in a pan of kerosene. He had honed the cylinder with a piece of fine glass his father had cut from a window pane, the way his father had learned from his father in 1921. He had reassembled the engine by memory, then checked his memory against the exploded diagram in the manual. The engine started on the second pull. The boy had to stand on the rear of the mower to hold it down because the governor spring was not yet adjusted. He adjusted it. He cut the grass. The boy on the foundation in eastern Tennessee, the one with the shovel, he is in this scene. He is the boy who rebuilt the engine. He is 12 and a half. He cut the grass that afternoon. By August, he will be 13. A small engine today is taken to a shop. The boy who once rebuilt his own is now 67. He has not held a draw knife. He has not cut a pane of glass. He has not stood on the back of a mower with a governor spring in his hand and a bed sheet under his elbows. The sheet was not the point. The engine was. The boy was. And the next thing on this list used to be in every Sears catalogue in 1958. Number 11. A man of 44 in eastern Pennsylvania in 1958 could build a stone wall. A real one, dry laid, no mortar, the kind that holds back a hillside,
using fieldstone he had gathered from his own land and from the glacial deposits his grandfather had been picking off the fields for 50 years. He had learned to lay a wall from an old Italian stonemason who had worked the quarries north of the city, and who, every Sunday after church, would walk the wall behind the man's barn and point with a stick at which stones to move and which to leave. He knew how to lay a tie stone, a long one running back into the wall, holding the face stones in place. He knew that a wall without ties is a wall that falls in 15 years. He knew this because the old man had told him, and because he had walked his own wall every spring for 20 years and seen which stones had moved. A retaining wall today is interlocking concrete block delivered on a pallet.
The man who owns it has not picked a fieldstone in his life. He does not know what a tie stone is. He does not know that his wall will lean in 20 years because it has no ties. He will replace it with another pallet of blocks the same way. The old Italian stonemason has been dead for 51 years. The wall is still standing. The Sunday walks were not the inheritance. The wall was. The walk was how the inheritance got into the wall. And the next skill on this list was the mark of a man who could feed his family through a hard winter. Number 10. A man of 52 in northern Maine in 1958 could build a root cellar, a real one, dug into a south-facing hillside with a ventilation stack and a door he had made from 2-inch pine planking, using a pick and a shovel and a level he checked against a length of clear plastic tubing filled with water. He had lined the walls with fieldstone he had gathered in the fall.
He had laid a gravel floor over a tile drain he had set on a 1% grade. The cellar held 48 degrees through January. He stored carrots, potatoes, turnips, and 20 quarts of his wife's canned beans on the shelves he had built from split cedar. He had not bought a vegetable from a store between November and April for 9 years. A root cellar today is a suburban basement with a dehumidifier. The man who owns it does not know what a tile drain on a 1% grade is. He does not know that a south-facing hillside holds its temperature through January. He buys vegetables from a store every week of the year, and the vegetables have been in a truck, and the truck has a diesel engine, and the diesel engine is connected to a supply chain he has never seen. The supply chain will fail him one day. The man who built the root cellar is not waiting for that day. And the next thing on this list is what every American boy once knew how to do before he could write his address in cursive. Number 9. A boy of 10 in central Iowa in 1958 could build a birdhouse. A real one, with a pitched roof and a removable side for cleaning, and a hole 1.5 inches in diameter for the eastern bluebird, using scrap lumber from his father's workbench, a handsaw, a coping saw for the hole, and a handful of nails from the coffee can on the workbench that his father had been filling for 15 years. He had watched his older brother build one in 1955, and his older brother had watched his father build one in 1949. And his father had learned from a Conservation Service pamphlet his uncle had picked up at the county fair in 1936. The boy hung it on a fence post at the edge of the orchard. A pair of bluebirds moved in that spring.
The boy checked on the babies every week. A birdhouse today is a kit from a craft store, painted in pastel colors, hung on a porch where no bluebird has ever lived. The boy who once built one is now 74, and the birdhouse he built is gone, replaced twice, and the fence post it hung on was taken out when the orchard was bulldozed for a subdivision in 1996. The subdivision has 50 houses. None of them has a birdhouse with eastern bluebirds in it. The Conservation Service pamphlet from 1936 is in a landfill in Iowa. And the next skill on this list was the difference between a man and a household. Number 8. A man of 33 in western New York in 1958 could build a fireplace mantel from a single piece of chestnut he had salvaged from a barn that was being torn down 2 miles down the road. He had cut the tree. It was a barn beam, 16 feet long, 8 by 8, with a chainsaw he had bought used the previous winter. He had planed it by hand, taking off shavings the thickness of a sheet of paper, because a power planer would have torn out the grain in places where the wood had weathered. He had carved the profile with a mallet and a chisel, 3 gouges and a flat. He had mounted it on the brick fireplace his brother-in-law had built the summer before. The mantel is in the house still. The man's granddaughter is in the house still. She does not know what chestnut is. She does not know the tree the wood came from was older than the United States. A mantel today is a polyurethane casting from a home center, finished to look like wood. The granddaughter does not know the difference. She will never know. The barn beam is in a museum in Cooperstown. The granddaughter's house is on a cul-de-sac in a development that was a cornfield in 1994.
The cornfield is not the loss. The granddaughter is the loss. The granddaughter who does not know what chestnut is, in a house with a mantel that pretends to be something it is not. And the next thing on this list is one we will not name twice. Number 7. A man of 58 in southern Indiana in 1958 could build a barn. A real one, 40 by 60, with a gambrel roof and a haymow and a stone foundation he had laid himself the previous summer. He had drawn the plans himself on a piece of brown wrapping paper from the feed store, in pencil in his own hand. He had framed it with timber he had cut from his own woodlot, and hauled to the site with a tractor he had been running since 1948. He had sheathed it with rough-sawn oak boards he had bought from a sawmill in the next county. He had roofed it with cedar shingles he had split himself over the previous winter, 8,000 of them, stacked in the haymow to cure. He had hung the doors on wooden tracks he had made from 2x8s. He had built it in 11 months. He had built it alone, except for 2 weeks in August, when his brother came to help raise the bents. The barn stood for 61 years. He lost it in a storm in 2019. The stones from the foundation are now stacked along the edge of the field. He is 88 and he cannot lift them. A barn today is a pole building with a steel roof and trusses delivered on a truck. The man who would have built his own is in the house on the cul-de-sac. He has never raised a bent in his life. He has never split a shingle. He has never drawn a plan on brown wrapping paper. The barn is the largest single thing on this list. It is also the most ordinary thing the man had ever built. He built it the way he had built the chicken coop at 31, the way he had built the porch at 40, the way he had built the kitchen cabinets at 44. The barn was not a project. The barn was what a man did with his hands when nobody was watching. That last sentence is the retention peak of this video. It is not a skill on the list, it is the thing the list is for. Remember that sentence. We are coming back to it at the end. The boy on the foundation in Eastern Tennessee is 13 now. It is spring of 1960. The foundation has been finished for 7 months. On top of it stands a small house his grandfather drew on a piece of brown paper, the same way the man in southern Indiana drew the barn. The house is 16 by 20. It has a porch. It has a stone chimney. The boy helped mix the mortar for the chimney. The boy helped hang the doors.
The boy helped roof it with cedar shingles he had helped split the winter before. He is 13 years old, and he has built a house. He has not built it alone, but he has built it. And his grandfather, who is now 73, has not asked for help from a neighbor in 43 years. The boy on the foundation. We are coming to him now. Number 6. A boy of 15 in Western Maryland in 1958 could build a stone fireplace, a real one, inside the cabin his family had bought the previous summer, the one without a chimney, using fieldstone from the property, fire brick for the firebox, and a damper he had salvaged from a house that was being torn down in town. He had laid the firebox first, in fire mortar he had mixed himself. He had built the throat with a smoke shelf he had cut from a piece of sheet metal with tin snips.
He had corbelled the chimney as it went up, narrowing the flue as it rose, the way his grandfather had done on the cabin in Michigan in 1913. The fireplace drew clean. The first fire he built in it, on a Friday in November, the year his family took possession, threw a heat that filled the room in 20 minutes. The boy sat in front of it and did not say anything. His mother did not say anything either. They did not need to. You may already know what number 6 is. You may have known for the last 4 items. The pattern is the doing itself, the making of a thing that does not exist until a man makes it, a house that does not exist until a man builds it, a wall that does not exist until a man lays it, a boy that does not become a man until he has done something nobody else in the household could do. A fireplace today is a gas insert in a fake surround. The boy who would have built the real one is now 47 and has never mixed fire mortar. He has never cut a smoke shelf. He has never sat in front of a fire he built himself, in a fireplace he laid himself, and not said anything because there was nothing to say. The silence in front of the fire is the inheritance. The gas insert cannot inherit it. Number 5. A man of 42 in northern Vermont in 1958 could build a covered bridge. A real one, 24 feet long, with a queen post truss he had cut from hemlock timber on his own land, and a roof of cedar shakes he had split the previous autumn. The bridge crossed a stream that ran through his property, the same stream his great-grandfather had crossed on a fallen log in 1879, and his grandfather had crossed on a plank bridge that had washed out in the flood of 1936, and his father had crossed on a different plank bridge that had also washed out in 1951. He had decided that this one would not wash out.
He had driven the abutments into the stream bed with stones he had hauled up from below the bridge site. He had set the trusses on wooden shoes he had cut to shed water. He had built the deck with white oak planking he had bought from a sawmill in town, 2 inches thick, 6 inches wide, with a 1/4-inch gap between boards for drainage. The bridge is still there. It has been there for 66 years. It has withstood 3 floods. The man who built it is gone. His grandson lives in the house and crosses the bridge every day to get the mail. The grandson does not know how to build a queen post truss. The grandson does not know he is crossing a thing his grandfather built that was meant to outlast him. A covered bridge today is a steel beam on concrete abutments with a wooden deck and a metal roof. It looks like a covered bridge. It is not a covered bridge. The grandson does not know the difference.
The difference will matter when the steel beam rusts through in 30 years, and the deck has to be replaced again. The queen post truss will be in the stream bed by then. The grandson will never see it. The grandson's grandson will never know it was there. Number 4. A man of 39 in central Pennsylvania in 1958 could build a timber frame house, a real one, 24 by 32, with bents he had cut and raised himself over the course of a summer, with the help of 3 neighbors who came for 2 days each in August. He had learned to cut a mortise and tenon from a man who had framed barns in the county for 50 years. And he had cut his first joint 3 times before the old man said it would do. He had cut the rest himself. He had raised the bents with a gin pole he had built from a 40-foot spruce he had cut that morning, with a come-along and a length of chain.
He had stood the bents up one at a time, plumbed them, braced them, and joined them with girts he had cut to fit. He had sheathed the roof with planks he had run through his own sawmill, a small one, belt-driven, that he ran off the tractor's PTO. He had shingled the roof the following summer with cedar shakes he had bought from a man who had split them in the winter. The house is still there. His daughter lives in it. She does not know the name of the man who taught her father to cut a mortise. She does not know he was a barn framer. She does not know that the house she lives in is held together by joints cut with a chisel and a mallet, with no nails, no screws, no fasteners of any kind, except gravity and the weight of the wood, and the geometry the man learned from a barn framer who was 68 years old in 1958. A timber frame house today is a hybrid. Timber frame look on the outside, conventional stud framing on the inside.
The daughter does not know. The framer is gone. The chisel is in a drawer in the daughter's kitchen. She uses it to pry the lid off a paint can. She does not know it is a timber framer's chisel. The geometry has been replaced by a nail gun and a hardware catalogue. The house will stand either way. It will not be the same house. Number 3. We are nearing the end. The list has been 31 items long, and we are down to 3. The next 2 are larger than the others, the way the foundation is larger than the chicken coop. The way the barn is larger than the mantel. We have been building toward this since the opening scene. A man of 51 in eastern Tennessee in 1958 could build a house for his grandson, a real one, the house we have been describing since the top of this video, on a foundation the boy dug when he was 11. The man had drawn the plans on a piece of brown paper from the feed store. He had cut the timber from his own woodlot. He had laid the stone foundation with the boy, who was now 13. He had framed the house. He had roofed it. He had built the porch. He had hung the doors. He had built the chimney. The boy had been there for every step. Not watching, not assisting. Working. By the end of the summer, the boy could lay a course of brick without being told. By the end of the fall, the boy could swing a broadaxe. By the spring of 1961, when the house was finished and the family moved in, the boy was 14 and he had built a house. The house is still standing. It is in a holler outside of Greenville. The boy's name is James. He is 80 now. He lives in the house. He has lived in the house for 64 years. He cut firewood off the same woodlot. He repaired the porch in 1986. He replaced the roof in 2004. He has never built another house. He has never needed to. The grandfather is gone.
He died in 1973. James still has the broadaxe. He still has the piece of brown paper with the plans on it, folded in a drawer in the kitchen, behind the silverware. His daughter does not know the plans are there. His grandson, who is 40, lives in Nashville. The grandson has not seen the plans. The grandson has not held the broadaxe. James is the last of a kind. There are others, but they are old now. They are in their 70s and 80s. They built their first house at 13 or 14 or 15 on a foundation their grandfather gave them to dig, and they have been the men they became on the day they finished that house. There will be no more. Number 2.
A man of 26 in 1958 could build a life. A real one, with a house he had built himself, a wife who knew how to can vegetables because her mother had taught her, a garden he had ploughed himself with a team of horses he had borrowed from his father-in-law, a woodpile he had split himself, a barn he had built himself, 3 children who had watched him do every one of these things, and a grandson he would one day teach to dig a foundation in a pasture in eastern Tennessee. He could build this life because he had spent his childhood and his adolescence and his young manhood doing the other 30 things on this list. The chicken coop was not the goal. The barn was not the goal. The house was not the goal. The man the boy was becoming was the goal. The grandfather in eastern Tennessee knew that. The grandfather did not say it. The grandfather handed the boy a shovel. A man of 26 today can build a life. He can. The tools are different.
The houses are different. The wives are different. The gardens are different. But the principle is the same. A man becomes a man by doing the things no one else will do for him. The man of 26 in 1958 did those things because they were the only things available. The man of 26 today does them because he has decided they are worth doing, in a world that no longer requires them of him. That is a harder thing. That is a man who chooses the shovel when no one is handing it to him. The choice is harder than the inheritance. Most men will not make it. Number 1. A boy of 11 in eastern Tennessee in July of 1958 could begin a thing he could not finish. He could stand at the edge of a half-dug foundation with a shovel taller than he was and a job he had not been taught how to do, and he could start.
That is the only skill on this list that cannot be bought, cannot be taught in a class, cannot be replicated by a kit or a contractor or a subscription. The skill is the beginning. The skill is the willingness to put the shovel in the dirt when nobody is watching, when nobody is grading, when the work will not be done today, when the man who handed him the shovel has walked away. The other 30 items on this list are the things a man can build with his hands. Number 1 is the only thing a man can build without his hands at all. Number 1 is the decision to begin. Everything else on the list is downstream of that.
The chicken coop, the carburetor, the timber frame, the covered bridge, the stone fireplace, the covered bridge, the timber frame house, the root cellar, the foundation in eastern Tennessee. Every one of them began with a man or a boy standing in front of a thing that did not yet exist, with the wrong tool, at the wrong hour, with no one watching, and starting. The boy on the foundation is 80 years old. The foundation is still there. The shovel is in the barn. The grandfather is in the ground in the family cemetery a quarter mile up the hill. The grandson is in Nashville. The grandson has not been handed a shovel. The grandson does not know there is a foundation to dig. The grandson does not know that the grandfather handed the shovel to the boy because the grandfather had been handed a shovel by his own grandfather. And the line goes back to a man in 1878 who split wood for a railroad crew and who, one morning in October of that year, walked out into a clearing and started digging the foundation of a house that is still standing. The house is still standing. The clearing is still a clearing. The shovel is in a barn. The line is the inheritance. The line is the skill. It is October of 1960. The house is finished. The boy is 13. He is standing on the porch of the house he has helped build in the holler outside of Greenville in eastern Tennessee. The chimney draws clean. The woodpile is stacked along the back fence. The porch is shaded by an oak the grandfather planted in 1931. The boy has a shovel in his hand. He is not building anything.
He is just standing there, the way a man stands on the porch of a house he built, in the evening, when the work is done and the light is going. He is the man we have been describing for the last 43 minutes. He is the man the list was for. He is the man who will not exist again in quite this form because the world that made him no longer exists. The grandfather who handed him the shovel is in the truck, packing up the post hole digger, ready to drive home. The boy has not thanked him. The boy will not thank him for 37 more years, and when he does, the grandfather will be in the ground, and the thank you will be spoken over the dirt. That is what has been lost. Not the skills, not the list, the grandfather, the truck, the shovel, the line. The fact that a man 70 years older than a boy could trust him with the foundation of a house and walk away because he knew, not hoped, knew that the boy would finish what he had started. What can be recovered is not the world. The world is gone. What can be recovered is the decision. A man today can build something with his hands this week. He can fix a faucet. He can sharpen a saw. He can pour a section of sidewalk. He can mix mortar. He can build a birdhouse. He can begin a thing he cannot finish this year. He can hand a boy a tool he has never used before and walk away and trust the boy to start. That is the recovery. That is the only recovery. It does not require a contractor. It requires a man willing to be the grandfather in the truck, driving away from a foundation, knowing the boy is still there. Which of these did your father or grandfather teach you? Tell me in the comments. Next week, we are going inside the kitchen cabinet, the one with the dovetailed drawers, the one he built the year you were born. Subscribe so you do not miss it.
The boy is on the porch. The light is going. The shovel is in the barn. The foundation is in the ground. The line is the inheritance. The line is the skill. The line is the thing that was handed down, and the thing that can still be handed down by any man willing to drive away from a foundation and trust the boy to start.